In the grim darkness of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, there are worlds where being born is a death sentence from your very first breath. If Dakk is the gold standard of misery, Armageddon is its closest rival. Strategically perched right on Terra's doorstep, Armageddon is a colossal hive world, a factory that never sleeps, but also a lethal snare. The atmosphere here is a thick soup of industrial toxins. The wind doesn't blow to cool you down, it blows to erode everything it touches with caustic ash and chemical grit. On Armageddon, if the war doesn't kill you, the air will. But from this suffocating crucible, the Armageddon Steel Legion was forged. These aren't your storybook heroes. They're the most pragmatic souls in the galaxy. They are the masters of mechanized infantry. While other regiments slog through miles of knee-deep mud, the soldiers of Armageddon are mounted in chimera armored transports, tearing through the ash wastes. To them, steel and speed are the only religions that ensure survival against the horrors of the cosmos. Their eternal nemesis? The Orcs. And we're not just talking about a few raiding parties. We're talking about massive green tides led by the beast itself, Gazkul Thraka. Armageddon has become an endless meat grinder, where courage is measured by the number of lost gun magazines emptied into Xeno's skulls and the miles of wasteland churned up by tank tracks. Now, here's the best part about being a Steel Legionnaire: the perks. Asterisk, you get a free gas mask, not just to keep your lungs from melting, but to hide a face weary from 24/7 combat shifts. You get a scenic tour of the most toxic wastelands in a roaring armored taxi. Your sheer stubbornness has even earned the respect of the creators of this universe, to the point where they've started ignoring you in the latest trailers. Perhaps you're so good at surviving in the ash that they assume, even if you're forgotten or cut off from reinforcements, the Steel Legion will still be there, lost gun in hand, rebreather on, ready to put a bolt through any orc that dares draw near. That is the price of being the most relentless bastards in a collapsing world. I am an army where most Imperial Guard regiments march on foot, or if they're lucky, ride horses with spears against aliens. The Steel Legion belongs to an aristocracy of its own. They don't need horses, they have chimeras. Maintaining a fully mechanized force on this scale is an extreme rarity. It usually requires complex treaties with the tech priests of Mars and enough funding to bankrupt several small planets. But for Armageddon, it's just a Monday. Why walk when you're the largest manufacturer of armored vehicles in the Segmentum Solar? Armageddon produces so many chimeras they literally don't know where to put them. So the logical solution is to shove every soldier into one and kick them out into the wastes. But don't mistake these soldiers for pampered city boys. Most recruits are drafted straight from the Hive Spires, where gang wars are more brutal than many Xenos invasions. If you aren't ruthless enough to survive an afternoon in a dark alley, you'll never live long enough to hold a lost gun. In fact, many notorious gangs are inducted into the military without a single day of training. Why teach a killer how to pull a trigger when he's been doing it since he was 6, just to earn a crust of bread? To survive the toxic soup they call home, every soldier is sealed in protective gear from head to toe. The iconic look? The rebreather mask. For officers, these masks are often fashioned into the likeness of a grinning skull. It's meant to spook the superstitious orcs, but honestly, seeing a faceless legion in skull masks and ochre greatcoats emerging from a chemical fog is enough to give even the hardiest Imperial soldier the chills. Currently, in the third war for Armageddon, chaos has reached a new peak. In the city of Acheron, the battlefield isn't just green, it's stained by the warp as demons join the fray. Millions are caught in a vortex of destruction where artillery falls like rain and kill teams stalk through a labyrinth of Promethean pipes. There is a bitter irony here. In Acheron, the survival rate of the Steel Legion is significantly higher than any other regiment. Not because of luck, but because their gear is refined to a level of perfection that would make a tech priest purr. And most importantly, they've been breathing poison and killing greenskins longer than anyone else in the galaxy. So, if you see a Steel Legionnaire calmly checking his rebreather amidst a hail of shells and the screams of demons, don't be surprised. To them, this isn't the apocalypse. It's just an overtime shift in the massive foundry called Armageddon. Welcome to the Steel Legion. Today, we dive into these hardened warriors, who they are, why they are so stiff, and why we didn't see them in the latest trailer even though the old man, Yarrick, has his own legacy to attend to. Let's go. If you think the Steel Legion only knows how to hunker down in their own smog-choked backyard, look no further than the 6-hour revolution on the agri-world of Castle. This is the ultimate proof. Never make a soldier of Armageddon wait. When Cardinal Skalin turned heretic and declared a delusional crusade, Colonel Kleist of the 16th Legion didn't waste a second filing paperwork or negotiating. Less than an hour after the Cardinal finished his speech, Steel Legion chimeras were already crushing the gates of the capital. While Skalin was busy dreaming of a throne, The Legion had already split their forces, seized the spaceport, and stormed the palace. The entire uprising was over in under 6 hours, so fast that most of the planet's citizens didn't even realize they'd been part of a revolution. That is the Steel Legion way. Fast, surgical, and suffocatingly ruthless. If you're planning to betray the Emperor, you'd better pray the reinforcements aren't the masked men from Armageddon. But glory isn't always gold and banners. There are wars so terrible that remembering them is considered a crime. The first war for Armageddon is a black scar on history. That was when demons spilled from the warp, turning the planet into a living nightmare. The records of this war were almost entirely purged by the Inquisition. Rumor has it that the price of repelling the demons was the blood of the Grey Knights and a brutal cleansing of every survivor. On Armageddon, sometimes the reward for heroic service against the warp is a bolt shell to the brain from your own side, just to keep the secret buried. Then, we have the most persistent guest of all, Gazkul Thraka. The Second War. Armageddon nearly fell, not because the orcs were invincible, but because of the criminal incompetence of Overlord Hermann von Straub. He turned a strategic defense into a total catastrophe. The legend of Yerrick. In the darkness of that stupidity, Sebastian Yerrick shone like a beacon. At Hive Hades, he taught the orcs the true meaning of human stubbornness. The Third War. 50 years later, Gazkul returned with a massive fleet and rocks. Asteroid fortresses slammed into the planet like meteors. War is no longer just an event here. It is a state of existence that don't think these guys only clean up their own mess. Under Lord Marshal Ganzoric, they brought the toxic flavor of Armageddon to the distant Spinward front on the planet Gamf Magna, while other regiments whined about fighting feral orcs in hallucinogenic swamps and toxic miasma. The Steel Legion treated it like a picnic. When you've spent your life in radioactive high vaults, a little psychedelic swamp gas is a breath of fresh air. The recruitment strategy. While other worlds spend months training recruits how to hold a rifle, Armageddon takes a shortcut. They draft hive gangs straight from the worst slums. They don't need to be taught how to kill. They've been fighting for every square inch of territory since before they had all their teeth. Trading a gutter knife for an M36 Lost gun and a skull mask is just a change of uniform for a bigger war. Their cunning and street-smart brutality make them masters of small unit tactics. Sometimes, survival comes from Imperial bureaucracy's legendary failures. Take the logistical blunder on Gamf Magna. The Departamento Munitorum messed up the paperwork. Instead of standard rations or ammo, they accidentally shipped a massive stockpile of Death Strike missiles, weapons capable of erasing entire cities, directly to the Steel Legion. While the logistics officers were likely tearing their hair out, the soldiers of Armageddon welcomed the mistake with a grin, not that you could see it behind the masks. They were like kids on Christmas morning, except their toys could turn a green tide into a pile of ash in seconds. The gear, mustard yellow uniforms. Not for fashion, but for survival, M36 Lost guns and photon grenades. Reliable and blinding, acid-resistant banners. Because on Armageddon, even your pride has to withstand corrosion. The 9th and 11th Legions turned industrial scrap heaps into orc graveyards. The 81st conducted a suicidal orbital drop to retake Hive and Furnace. The survivors were so few they had to be folded into other units just to save on paperwork. That's the Armageddon spirit. If the enemy doesn't kill you, the bureaucracy will. The 339th Iron Heads. During the Third War, they fought orcs inside a massive tank factory. As Lehman Russ battle tanks rolled off the assembly line, the soldiers jumped straight into them, unpainted, untested, and uncertified, and drove them directly into the enemy's face. Welcome to Armageddon, where the tanks are delivered at the speed of light, and the only thing more dangerous than the toxins in the air is the man wearing the mask. Even steel has a breaking point. The 141st Legion was nearly wiped from existence while defending the city of Polonius against the Black Skulls tribe. They were only saved when the Salamander's Space Marines made a literal firefall onto the battlefield. After the dust settled, the remnants of the 141st were gathered up to serve as spare parts for the 252nd Legion. Don't feel too bad for them, though. At least they don't have to file reports for broken equipment anymore. Because they have no equipment left to break, we cannot talk about the Legion without mentioning Major Pius Corin, the hero of Anthrint. Behind the controls of a Shadow Word, the Iron Saint, he turned an entire orc armored convoy into scrap metal as if he were a shooting gallery. And then, of course, there's Commissar Yerrick, a man so fueled by pure hatred for orcs that death itself is too afraid to knock on his door. Yerrick doesn't just fight with weapons. He fights with sheer, unadulterated spite. Rumor has it the only reason Yerrick is still alive is that the orcs believe he is immortal. In this universe, if enough orcs believe something, it becomes reality. It's a bitter irony that humanity's greatest hero survives thanks to the collective delusion of his enemies. If that's not strange enough, look at the 808th Legion. They fought sorcerers, mutants, and sentient sludge on the planet Sisk, wading through living fire and psychic illusions to claim victory. Their reward for such transcendent bravery? A blessing from Priest. That's it. No bonus, no vacation, just a prayer and an immediate deployment to the next meat grinder. The name isn't just to sound cool. It reflects their very essence and their method of survival. Born of the Forge, Armageddon is a hive world where steel is birthed from gargantuan factories every second. Its people are born in steel cities, breathe industrial exhaust, and work with machinery before they can walk, the mechanized standard. Unlike the Cadians or Catacans who might march on foot, the Steel Legion mandates that every single squad has its own Chimera armored transport. They are a legion permanently encased in a protective shell of steel, the Unyielding Wall. The name honors their legendary stubbornness during 2 apocalyptic orc invasions. Faced with the Green Tide, the soldiers of Armageddon stood fast like an impenetrable wall of iron. This is the most real-world reason of all. Currently, Games Workshop is focused on pushing the plastic model line for the Death Corps of Krieg, those other gas mask enthusiasts. Since both the Steel Legion and Krieg share a similar aesthetic, long coats and rebreathers, GW tends to prioritize their current bestseller in media. Most Steel Legion models are ancient, dating back to the era of metal or early-gen sculpts, and haven't received a modern refresh like the Sadians that in the world of marketing. If there isn't a shiny new plastic kit to sell, filmmakers usually avoid putting them in trailers to prevent fans from wanting something they can't actually buy. The Steel Legion remains the legends of Armageddon, but for now, they are stepping off stage, partly because their numbers have been ground down by centuries of war, and partly to make room for the new models on the shelf. Perhaps they're just busy repairing their chimeras, or maybe the smog on Armageddon is so thick the camera crews simply can't find them. That's all for today. Did I miss your favorite Steel Legion fact? If so, leave a comment below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next deployment.